Good morning there, School Tomorrow students. It's the end of August in 2020. Shout out to Earlham. There's kind of a Quaker. There's kind of a Quaker school motif. You could say a theme. Um, like when you're skinning a gooey, you know what that means? You apply a set of cosmetics, you could say. A look and feel layer right before the user. That makes it sound superficial in some ways, but it's also hot swappable. In other words, you want to change your look and feel, you can. So the School of Tomorrow comes in a certain package, but it comes with instructions or ideas for transforming it into something more suitable to your conventions, locale, community standards, whatever you want to call it. So back to where we started or ended really in a couple other videos recently. We were looking at Orson Welles. I'm going to go back to movie directors. I'm going to touch on Oliver Stone. I'm going to do his interview with Joe Rogan, an excerpt where he finally makes the connection to Prouty, right? One of our syllabus guys, because in earlier interviews, Joe Rogan is feeling critical of the Oliver Stone movie, JFK, because he thinks that the Man X character is completely out of the blue invented. It seems to me that's what he thinks, talking to Abby Martin and stuff. So here is an interesting spot where he gets the info. So I'm about to do that first, and then if you'll think back, or if you've just joined us, this won't be a matter of thinking back, but there was a time in July of this year where I was a guest on Stefan's early YouTube. Like he's just cranking out a YouTube almost as a test. A couple YouTubes here where I was an invited guest, and we had some fun. We're clearly playing around a lot, but one thing we got into, let me just show you this. It's actually been playing in the background, I see. But we got into these like mandel bulbs, which here are extremely, let's back up a little more. It's related to fractals. Let's see, that's an ad in the video. Okay. I'm playing videos within videos as usual. It's my technique, and I could get confused there, but there's the idea. And I know he asked me somewhere in this, I should be rolling it back on this one. I know he was asking me somewhere in this video if Blender, remember Blender, we're going to look at Blender in a minute, could Blender do this stuff too? Could Blender make mandel bulbs? And I want to report some advances on that, and as a practical exercise, I want to show you the process for embedding a YouTube in a Jupyter notebook, okay? I want to have one like technical, this is our goal thing that we're learning. Even if you already know it, it kind of helps tie things together. So that's going on too. So let's do Joe Rogan, then Oliver Stone, then we'll talk here about mandel bulbs, and then I want to end on something about Orson Welles, okay? And these are all themes we've been talking about. If you recall the model, we think of our curriculum kind of like as a ball, a planet so-and-so. And you're getting used to the nodes and edges, the graphs, the maps, the overlays, and you can learn how to wander around. And you know, there are trailheads you come to that you say, wow, that looks interesting, but I'm on a tight schedule. I cannot at this point take that fork in the road. But you're not heartbroken about it. You can come back to it someday and branch to that fork in the road, and you can explore it, right? And that's kind of what I do in this YouTube channel. There are things here that if you've watched a bunch of my YouTubes, maybe not in chronological order, you keep coming across same topics. Like here's that book I found at the free library about Unix, old book because it's pre-Linux, you could say. And, you know, we keep coming back to like that world of the command line, of operating systems, time management, operating systems. In traversing our curriculum and advancing here and there, learning more, filling in the blanks or gaps, we are behaving in an operating system like manner, right? Getting a little work done here and there. Now, if you really get into something, we talk about that too, time management. It's like it's not always about task switching and being all distracted. It seems like people attack ADD and they say it's a deficit. But what if you wrote a curriculum where if you were of the mind to change channels quickly, that would be okay too. Like I'm almost doing that sometimes when I talk, right? I'm showing you different topics and you're like, well, that's boring, that's boring, that's boring, that's interesting, that's boring, that's boring. So you want to go back to that's interesting, maybe. So, and then you go slowly there. We call it slow reading. There are different speeds to your proceeding in a study area. So, Joe Rogan, I'm just going to play this segment here. I'm going to actually leave the sound on for a change. And let's just listen for a couple minutes, and then we'll look at some other stuff.
So then that's three stories. And then the fourth story, if you want to know the truth, in my thinking at that time, was the Donald Sutherland business.
Yes,
he comes into the movie at the halfway point, and he gives Garrison a lot of new information because Garrison thinks he's dealing on a local level. He thinks he's dealing with something that's in New Orleans. He's not sure what beyond it. So now Cohen says it's a much bigger story, which sends Costner into the last act, going to Dallas, and it's too much for the Costner character. He's blown away by it. He knows he's up against forces much larger than he ever thought.
And this what was the motivation for the Donald Sutherland character?
Fletcher Prouty. He was a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. He was the focal officer between the CIA and the Pentagon. An old-timer, World War II, did a lot of service, and he was in charge of basically providing the CIA with military equipment for covert operations. He worked in Tibet. He worked on a lot of the operations in the 50s and the late 40s. We had operations going on in Ukraine, at China, Tibet. He trained Tibetans in the Colorado mountains, and many stories. He's written several books. He was a keen observer of the differences that were going on. He knew Dulles, used to brief him, and told me stories about then. Everything changed after Kennedy was killed.
So you got to meet him?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I hung out with him.
So this was me on Facebook. I've shown this similar screen clip, in another YouTube on my channel, and here was where I was being critical of Joe Rogan for because he was criticizing the Donald Sutherland character as completely fictional, and I'm kind of glad we got that straightened out. And we're linking back, remember, to what I called a curriculum outline at the time. That we would move on to Laurel Canyon from Orson Welles, or you don't have to come from that chronology. I'm just saying the Laurel Canyon story fits in here, and then we talk more generally about cults. I think in my curriculum, we don't shy away from the really like Falun Gong and all the cults, the Gulenists, the Quakers. We need to study these sort of centers of belief and activity, right? I've had good discussion following up with Alan Potkin and so on this thread. It's been fun. Switching now to, that was back in the beginning of August. We're now almost to the end of August, right? And so this is Facebook at the moment, and I'll just line it up for our final segment. I did enjoy this discussion here, by the way, because I think what happened during Scarface, this is Oliver Stone's film, Scarface, Platoon, and so on, is the public was becoming, I won't say more cynical, I would say more educated, kind of in the sense that Breaking Bad, the fictional TV series, was educational. It helped people to not moralize quite the same way, and they could begin to see how, I'll call it organized crime, or how crime and government do interweave, right? And sort of have to, and you don't just express moral outrage and shock all the time. Like, it's easier to tell history when people are over their hang-ups about governments being criminal, right? It's like we haven't reached a point of civilization that the bar is, everyone breaks Kellogg-Briand, let's put it that way. That's an old treaty, still on the books. Like I was saying, the disrespect for sovereignty has kind of obviated the need for it in a way. We can't have it and destroy it. I thought this was a fun outfit, and I think a legacy of the Trump administration is going to be that we're not going to go back to Russophobia the same way. They lost Russiagate, the Dems, and you may get a Dem in the presidency, but don't take for granted that the Russophobia is going to keep working. So here I'm queuing it up for the last segment about Orson Welles, and let me jump over to Jupyter Lab now and talk again about Mandelbulbs, remember, and how to embed in the Jupyter Notebook environment a new video. Real easy to do. Blender, by the way, is part of our Calculator of Tomorrow technology. And you may be thinking, it's totally overkill to use something as high-powered as Blender to just like graph XYZ equations like parabolas or cones, or like do Platonic kind of geometry, CAD. Why don't we just stick to a calculator, right? That's what some teachers might say. But remember our aspect, our GST, PWS, we want people to feel that they have a right to a serious personal workspace if they're expected to tackle any of this. And we do expect people to look into this because we are giving them opportunities. And so your education, basically, the fact that you're in school entitles you to some horsepower, we still call it, okay? Even if people aren't that familiar with what a horse can and cannot do in terms of energy expense per time unit. Like if you can really crank it out, okay, that's a strong horse kind of thing. So this is all Blender. As I'm talking about horses and energy here, I'm scrolling through some previous stuff, and I just want to capture now and write later this video about creating Mandelbulbs in Blender, not by me at all. And it's got expertise in it that I'd like to get more of, right? Like the math in this particular video. And what am I talking about? Let's go back to my history. Create Mandelbulb fractals in Blender Eevee. So this is using the new 2.8 as of this time. That's 2.8. Let me just sample this for you a little bit after the ad's done and show you why I'm so excited about the Blender environment for just learning algebra. I'm going to jump ahead to where he's using these tiles. You're probably going to be thinking something like, gee, this looks a lot like Scratch, doesn't it? If you came up through MIT Scratch, the drag and drop palette used to create mathematical engines, you could say what he's running here looks to be like a loop, similar to what you have with fractals. Like we're big fans of fractals around here, right? I even opened for Mandelbrot once at PSU in pretty short notice. Different kinds of sequences and series. So you're learning about fractals even in this video. It's a very good video, by the way. He takes his time to introduce fractals as a concept and then jumps to Mandelbulbs and how to implement them by, in Blender here, sliding tiles around and creating the necessary mathematical constructs to do the work. Now that looks pretty complicated, doesn't it? And I wouldn't say start here. Like, let's see what it looks like to do a parabola, right? Or a sine wave or something like that. This is like, we're getting to an end goal here. Now you can just download this and run it on your own Blender. So I'm not pretending like you can't jump to the final result. And even in terms of comprehension, you may not actually want to go down this trail all that far, is what I'm saying right now. But the fun part is we can indeed create mantle bulbs inside the Blender environment. And this is an excellent tutorial which I now want to capture, curate, we say. So remember, we're doing study techniques here. How do we live and learn in this new ecosystem as part of the School of Tomorrow, right? We're learning kind of public school topics like American history, filmmaking, the great directors. You know, we've been going through a lot of that. And now we're going to copy okay, here we are, YouTube. I just said copy. I don't want to embed. I don't want to send it over to Facebook. Not right now. I want to go to Jupyter Lab. And I want to scroll to the bottom of my Blender library here. And we'll talk more later, let's say. I'm curating for later, right? So in the next cell below this, I can just go, let's see, plus a new cell appears, and I'm just going to paste so I have it here safely, the URL that I want. Now I'm just going to go up and cut and paste because I'm lazy. I don't necessarily want to retype. I want to remind myself of how you embed a YouTube. It is like that, except instead of repeating the same YouTube a second time, I'm going to embed this new one that's all about creating mantle bulbs in your calculator of tomorrow. All free software. The school does not have to bellyache about, oh, Blender's so expensive. You can't spend thousands of dollars per student for Blender. Now, why didn't that work? Because you have to run this thing top to bottom. Otherwise, it hasn't loaded the YouTube. Now, yeah, of course, but if you run this in the cloud, I'll say this, even just this, when I say cloud, by the way, a school, an individual school, some building somewhere, let's say, can have a bunch of servers. Like you could put racks in public school buildings and fill those with servers, and that's where you concentrate student work over time. Let's just run this top to bottom, make sure it all works. And then we'll close out with Orson Welles. That's all there was to it. That's all we had to do. Right? It sounds like, oh, you're going to embed a YouTube in a Jupyter notebook. That's going to take hours. I don't really have time. But we've just done it and it's over. And, okay, there's lots to still do. I haven't learned everything there is to know about mantle bulbs. Don't mistake curating for sudden mastery of a topic, right? I sure don't make that mistake. But what I'm doing here is confirming that I have the video and sort of doing an advanced bookmark. And at the same time, I'm helping map the geography, or I'm helping map the curriculum for you guys. People watching on YouTube, you may already be here, a Blender fanatic. You've been using it for years. You may be the one who made this tutorial. You know, there are people looking at this, I would imagine, with skills that far exceed mine in terms of what I personally am able to do with Blender at this point. And that is, again, a signal to teachers. This is an important topic. You're always being challenged with this question. What do I do about students who are way more advanced than I am? And it's, think of a geography, think of no one having time to go down all these trails. You got a backpack, you're a teacher, you've been around the block a few times, you've been a lot of trails, but there's so many trailheads you've never gone down. And some of your students are going to want to do that. And what your job is to show them kind of where it does branch off and where there are points of contact. Like, see if you can help your student find a way to wander off and look at something you really know nothing about. But if they want to rejoin your curriculum, or they want to find points of contact, it's not going to be hard for them. You've sent out feelers, okay? So here we are with, okay, Rosalie's a retired librarian, and she's good at finding stuff and digging stuff up. And we've been talking about Black Lives Matter. We've been talking about some of the leaders going back of civil rights movement, which has been including like gender equality or whatever you want to call it. We've been talking about Kiyoshi, Stokely Carmichael, Muhammad Ali. I always talk about Father Divine. Most people don't. Again, cults, remember? I'm getting into them now. Talked about doing that. So Orson Welles, he's a young guy in this picture doing radio in New York, and he is going to bring his theater troupe to Hollywood. Now, this is a pattern. People already good in theater thinking we could do this in the movies and be good at it, and of course they can. This is, of course, a logical thinking pattern. We, a great acting troupe, can make it big in the movies, absolutely, especially now that there's sound and soundtrack audio, right? So many cool tricks in Citizen Kane to get really good audio. Such a brilliant adaptation of theater culture to movie culture. But before he comes to Hollywood and makes a big name with Citizen Kane, which actually took a long time to catch on because it was suppressed, we talk about that. Go back a few videos, Americana, more Americana. So here's a picture of Orson Welles, and it links to a Newsweek article which Rosalie found, which does not actually, that we could see, link to the audio file that it's all about. So the headline says, "Listen to Orson Welles denounce police brutality." And this is a story of a World War II American who comes back to his homeland and is beaten severely by scaredy cats who don't want to lose their supremacy. So they want to say, we run this town just because you've been to the military. Don't think you can be uppity and curse back at a bus driver, right? He's not your equal. Don't treat him like that, right? He can curse you, you can't curse him. And these are reflexes that go way back to slave days. And, changing your reflexes, getting out of your old habits, is what mind over brain is about in our transcendentalist philosophy. We've had lots of videos on mind over brain. Brain here stands for all your reflexes, which includes your habitual thoughts, right? The reflex thing is pretty deep, and it goes into your thinking, not just, that's why we call ourselves knee-jerk this, knee-jerk that, as kind of an insult. Because we're saying people are just being completely reflexive. You sound like you're thinking, but you're actually being thoughtless because you're just reciting thoughts that you've had in the past. You're really not having thoughts, new thoughts or whatever. So disciplines around thinking, stuff like that, we've talked about that in other videos. Now I'm winding up with Orson Welles, and I just wanted to say, you can listen to this, even if it's not in the Newsweek article. So you've got enough keywords here if you want to search this and listen to the video. That's what I'm saying. Here's a trailhead that you may want to go for. And I'll put a link also in the comments to this YouTube. But given Rosalie's a librarian and I have some search skills, between the two of us, we finally managed to isolate the audio file that they were talking about. And this is what the page looks like. I could actually jump right in here and play a little bit of that. I'll do that and come back and say goodbye. All right, so let's listen to just a few seconds of this Orson Welles radio broadcast.
Good morning, this is Orson Welles speaking. I'd like to read to you an affidavit. I, Isaac Woodward, Jr., being duly sworn, do depose and state as follows, that I am 27 years old and a veteran of the United States Army, having served for 15 months in the South Pacific and earned 1 battle star. I was honorably discharged on February 12, 1946, from Camp Gordon, Georgia, at 8:30 p.m. at the Greyhound Terminal in Atlanta, Georgia. While I was in uniform, I purchased a ticket to Winnsboro, South Carolina, and took the bus headed there to pick up my wife to come to New York to see my father and mother. About 1 hour out of Atlanta, the bus driver stopped at a small drugstore. As he stopped, I asked him if he had time to wait for me until I had a chance to go to the restroom. He cursed and said no. When he cursed me, I cursed him back. When the bus got to Aiken, he got off and went and got the police. They didn't give me a chance to explain. The policeman struck me with a billy across my head and told me to shut up. After that, the policeman grabbed me by my left arm and twisted it behind my back.
So I recommend you might want to listen to the rest of that. Here's a branch point connected to kind of a manga version of what happens when people feel threatened by, defiance, right? If you won't do what they say, how do they react? Again, you might want to get into psychology here. This curriculum is all about psychology as much as anything, so that's partly at Applewhite's focus too. All right, thanks to the Birmingham Civil Rights Museum for having excellent exhibits. That you've been looking at a few of the slides I took there that day, and I visited the Magic City, Birmingham, Alabama. All right, talk to you again, guys. Talk to you soon.